Mary. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mary, and thanks everyone for coming to this workshop today. My name is Vivian Ostrowski, and I'm the Director of Gateway to College at Holyoke Community College.
Hello, my name is Julissa, and I am a resource specialist at Holyoke Community College in the Gateway to College program. So welcome.
And my name is Shannon, and I'm also a resource specialist at Gateway to College at Holyoke Community College. Glad to have you guys here.
So, dual enrollment is a great opportunity, right, for young people to expand their horizons and get a jump start on college. But we are terribly concerned that initiatives that allow some students to accelerate may actually widen the educational gap even further. So we argue that kids who are struggling in traditional high school are exactly the kids with the most to gain from seeing themselves as successful college students. And it's our job to interrupt business as usual and find alternative pathways so that these students can not just start, but can be wildly successful in college. So this presentation will hopefully provide some insights, strategies about structure and culture to expand dual enrollment to the kids who are otherwise left behind. We'll take a short break for questions after each section, and we invite you to put your questions and comments in the chat. Shannon.
So Gateway is a 100% dual enrollment program for students who are not successful in traditional high school. And we serve a student population that is predominantly Black and Brown, and all of our students are eligible for free lunch. Our students have complicated, complex lives. They're underserved and struggle with homelessness, food insecurity, anxiety, domestic violence, mental health struggles, transportation issues, racism, and sexism. They are caregivers to younger siblings. They need to work to support their households. They have parents who are incarcerated or deceased, are court involved in the foster care system, survivors of sexual assault and gender identity discrimination. Some had dropped out, some were overage and undercredited, all were struggling.
So kids who face these kinds of obstacles struggle to even finish high school, right? They are certainly not seen as college material, but with the right support and some creative work with systems, these kids can absolutely become college material. So I ask you to suspend disbelief for a moment. So Julissa, who do we serve? Our students range in age from 16 to 21. They are usually referred to Gateway by their sending districts to pay for their seats in the program. Students are about halfway done with their high school credits when they arrive, and their average high school GPA is 1.66. I repeat, their average high school GPA is 1.66. These students have not experienced much academic success. They don't feel connected to school, and institutions have often not been kind to them. So how do we do? Let me begin by saying that we used to suck. For real. Looking back, the college wasn't sure that it wanted kids who hadn't been successful in high school to come to college. The students didn't know what they were getting themselves in for, and the program didn't yet have a culture. Just changing the four walls wasn't enough. So we gradually developed our staff motto of Relentless Kindness, and we developed the 4 rules of Gateway, and we'll tell you more about that later. So we are now incredibly proud of our outcomes, but we clawed our way here. Failure was simply not an option. These kids were here, they deserved a powerful experience, a useful experience, and we needed to figure it out. We needed to transform. So our grads, remember high school 1.66? Our grads have a college GPA of 2.3. We have a 1-year persistence rate of 95%. We have a graduation rate of 83%. We have served 763 students since 2010, and we have 455 high school graduates. Of those 455, 229 have continued in college that we know of. The number is likely higher. Plus, our grads are constantly circling back to us to talk about college or to get help with their financial aid. Relationship is everything, even after a kid graduates or leaves the program. Our grads have earned, ready, 49 associate degrees, 14 bachelor's degrees, and 3 master's degrees, and there are a lot more in process. So, shifting from a high school GPA of 1.66, or let's say shifting from being dropped out, having a high school GPA of 1.66 to a college GPA of 2.3 to actually earning a college degree, this saves lives. This changes lives, it changes communities. And for us, this is how we heal the world.
help if I unmuted myself. Sorry about that. So, here we are. We're opening up the college gates to kids with complicated lives, students with D+ averages, and more importantly, students with a severe lack of trust for the educational system. They didn't believe that it had the ability to see them or to serve them in any capacity that actually mattered to them. And so that opening was and continues to be an audacious, radical notion. We had no idea what to do when we inherited a struggling program 11 years ago. In fact, our first conference presentation ever was building the plane while flying it, because we knew even then that we had an idea that was worth saving. We had students that were counting on us. And since that presentation, we've learned so much. Today's presentation is going to focus on two of the fundamental pieces of our programming, structure and culture. So that's where we're going to get started. And we'll go ahead with Vivian.
All right. So there we go. There I am. So traditional dual enrollment weaves together high school and college, right? Our model introduces a third strand, the non-credit side of the college house. The truth is, most of our students are not ready for college work when they start with us. It's our job to get them ready, and part of that is not doing business as usual. One incredibly important tool we use are non-credit classes. Our students are likely not earning college credits for all of the classes they take with us. If we can get them ready, then the credits will come. In our opinion, and this might be heresy, college knowledge and confidence are way more important than actual college credits. I repeat, if we can get them ready, then the credits will come. So the following 5 slides will hopefully paint a picture of our program's structural evolution. We're using a really basic, this is what we used to do, now this is what we do format. So we used to require an 8th grade reading level. Now we don't care about reading level. We use our application process, which is extensive, to build buy-in and hope and courage. If kids bring those things, our fabulous faculty can teach anything. Please don't leave kids out based solely on past academic performance. Our job is to build the scaffold so the students can get where they need to be, not to keep them out because they aren't where they should be. If kids can articulate what went wrong in high school and how they want it to be different, if they are at all open to the possibility of transformation, then the academic magic can happen.
So we used to only offer English and math in the first semester. No one who struggles in traditional high school is knocking down any doors to take any more English and math classes. Now, we still offer English and math classes, of course, but we also offer apiculture, personal finance, US history through film, positive psychology, yoga and wellness, and fundamentals of science. We run these classes on the non-credit side, especially the first semester. On a practical level, students get the high school credit. On a more significant level, students learn the pace, rigor, and expectations of college. They learn that the patterns of successful college student and how to use Moodle, how to communicate, self-advocacy, and the differences between a high school IEP and college accommodations. They start to trust adults and they get involved on campus. This sort of growth and grounding is way more important than college credits. The credits are gravy ladled on once a firm foundation is built.
So next on our list, we used to register all students for English 085 and Math 075 on the credit side. That's the college side with 0 buffer. We didn't test their academic abilities. We didn't review their transcripts for levels. We just put them into those 2 classes regardless of what they actually knew. Great pedagogy, right? Listen, we didn't know. We didn't know, but we were still learning. We're still learning. That's why we're sharing it with you. So the good news was that underprepared students were getting a chance at college classes. Awesome, right? The terrible news is that most students struggle a lot in their first term. Life is still complicated. It didn't just get solved because they're now at Gateway. And the reality is that many weren't academically ready for those courses when they came to us. And so some kids failed and some kids didn't earn the C- that they needed to get to the next level on their first try. And so our students were using up some of the 90 credits allowed for financial aid for an associate degree. plus their financial aid GPAs were terrible. And what that meant was that some of those students who finally graduated from high school and who finally believed and saw themselves as college material could now not get financial aid because they didn't meet SAP. Now, I don't know if y'all know what SAP is, but SAP is satisfactory academic progress. And you should know what it is. And if you don't know what your partner in college's policies are for SAP, please find out, like write yourself a note, do something in the notes to really make sure that you find out, because it's critical for your students. So we realized that kind of the individualized part of our process was missing. So not all students come in with the same academic levels. We know this, we just didn't think about it at the time. So we shifted and started giving our students the college placement test. And we started paying attention to what they took in high school and what grades they got. So stepping away from that cohort model and really thinking about our students as individual students. And that allowed us to start paying attention to what they took, how they did in high school, and it allowed us to place them where they need to be. So never mind English 11 or Math 12 or whatever their transcript said, we met them where they were academically. If they excelled in one subject, then they got to take a higher level course, maybe English 101. If they needed more help in a separate class, then they got the help that they needed. And this change revolutionized our students' success. And of course, to save SAP, which asterisk, super important, we now, like Vivian said, run things on the non-credit side. So we run non-credit versions of developmental English and math with the same curriculum, same faculty, the same rigor and assessment, of course, the same expectations. It still feels like college, but we are protecting the students' college transcript, which is critical if they're going to continue on after they leave us.
Thank you, Julissa. We used to make conservative choices about class schedules because we feared harming the student's college transcript. One of the things we say in our information sessions is that if you come to Gateway, we plan to be the best thing that ever happened to your education, but we can ruin your life. And what we mean by that, of course, is satisfactory academic progress, right? And if we put them into a college course that it turns out they're not ready for, we risk ruining their financial aid eligibility. So we got pretty conservative about classes for a while. Our students weren't earning that many college credits. Then we discovered credit for prior learning and internal articulation agreements. So now we have students in statistics, forensics, psychology, sociology, and we're working towards more. So here's how it works. Our students are registered for non-credit sections of credit classes. We have articulation agreements with those academic departments that allow students to earn college credits if they earn a C- or better in that non-credit course. So if the student gets a C- or better, they get college credit, and of course that counts towards high school. If they get a D, D+, D, D-, they still earn high school credit for the class. And if they get an F, they don't get credit, but we didn't ruin their lives, right? Way more important than credits to us, obviously, is that our kids have the opportunity to explore and expand and experience the breadth of college. Our kids weren't in the high school track where they were immersed in enrichment activities. They weren't in lab sciences. They weren't in AP courses. Offering classes like forensics gives our kids a shot at the kinds of careers and possibilities that were never open to them before. They struggled in high school, but now the classes are more interesting, the culture is more positive, and the stakes are higher. The kids rise to the challenge. Not everyone, and not right away necessarily, but they rise.
Our last one for this section is we used to wait for midterm grades, right? Like everyone else, we left half a semester go by. Of course, this was not without helping students with their work or checking in, which we do all the time. But when we started, it was without an intentional process of inquiry, and that just wasn't enough. We learned that really quickly. So now we gather info in abundance. There is an abundance of information that we ask for and expect and look through. We make sure that our faculty know right from the start of their time with us, our expectations for sharing student information. And no worries, of course, FERPA releases are all signed, so it's safe. We share a live attendance sheet with each instructor that we all have access to. And through that sheet, we receive daily information about attendance, about concerns, and about triumphs. So we're able to react to students in a really quick way, right? So if they're supposed to be in class, we see them in the hallway, we can get there. We can check in with them about whether they were having a good time or give them praise when they're doing great. And so, yes, the students are in college right now. And of course, we want to treat them like adults. But we know that old habits die hard and they take time to shift. And so we need to adult with them until they are ready to take over that role for themselves. So we do not accept failure as an option. You know, quantifiable success may take a while, but anyone who stays in the game with us has not failed. And that greatly depends on how much effort we put into connecting during those first few weeks.
Okay, so this concludes our section on structure. In a nutshell, we accept students regardless of their reading level, which means many of our students begin in pre-college developmental classes. We offer our developmental math and English classes on the non-credit side, along with a host of other content courses on the non-credit side. We are very careful to place students in the right levels in classes, taking great care not to mess with their financial aid eligibility. We use internal articulation agreements to give students access to a wide variety of college classes without risking their college transcript. And we weave a web of constant communication with all the players. We built this parallel structure on the non-credit side so unprepared students can become prepared. Once they have the skills and the confidence, they continue in college like everyone else, and the trajectory of their life has changed. So pause. We have time for some questions. So I'm wondering if anybody wants to say your question or put it in the chat. And Julissa, I don't know what you're able to see. So you're in charge of this.
Yeah, I posted it in the chat already, but if you want to make a comment or put a question up, feel free to unmute yourself and check in. Does this sound familiar? Are these things that you practice yourself? Anything that sounded confusing? We have more to share, but we'd love to hear from some of you if you'd like to ask a question or make a point.
I just have a quick question. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Brooke, thank you. Yes.
Awesome. So I'm from the Green Bay, Wisconsin area, and we work at a technical college here, and we are looking at starting the Gateway to College program in the fall of 22. Yay! And I'm actually in the process of looking for a kind of coordinator director. So if there's anybody on the call that's looking for a job in Green Bay, just let me know. But anyway,
I just want to make sure you know that Julissa and Shannon are not looking for a job. No. All right. Sorry. Back to you.
Well, maybe you, Vivian. I don't know. I just wanted to, so as I'm sharing this information with our schools that we work with, one of the big questions that they are kind of pushing back, and I'm just looking, I mean, we have kind of a canned response, but I'm just wondering how you would respond to this or anything you might be able to share. The 100% participation and attendance is the piece that they question, because they're like, well, these are the same students that, that's the reason why they are where they are at. So, how do you engage them and want them to physically be there? So we have kind of a canned response that we share, but what would your response be to that?
I don't know who wants to start. I don't know. Am I frozen? I'm not frozen. Okay. Sorry. So it's hard to answer that question, right? Only because, of course, administration is going to be like, this kid literally came to school 30 days last year and you want me to pay for them to be in this program. Like, what's different? And we're like, we swear they're going to show up. And the reality is that they do, because we're offering them something different. The type of programming that we offer is, right, smaller programming, more intentional, more direct. We are built for students who have struggled in high school. Is it going to be perfect? No, but we end up with really great attendance rates. I don't know if perhaps it might help to get data, for example, from a program like ours and the many other, I think there's 30 programs right now, to show attendance data, to be able to say, look, we serve the same type of students as they do, and this is what happens when the shift happens. I'm not sure what else to say in terms of Vivian, director to the director sort of wise, what you would propose to a district. But there is something about the shift in buildings, the shift in culture, that students come. They want to be there. Not every single one, not every single time, but I will say that overall, perhaps showing the data from other programs, because it works and they show up and they come. So maybe having factual data might help your district be like, okay, maybe make it worth a shot. I don't know if there's anything else, Shannon or Vivian.
The power of being in college is real power. And so our students meet with the faculty starting during orientation, and the faculty talk about what it takes to be successful in college. And they're interacting with the kids on a different kind of level, with a different kind of power, with a different kind of seriousness and intensity. And in our case, the kids buy in to that. And so if you have to show up in order to be successful, and you're in college now, and this is you 2.0, then your investment level has totally shifted. We will use the word audacious through this presentation a lot. It is audacious, this notion that kids who weren't successful in high school can be successful in college. And what I ask you to do is to believe and to bring your districts to believe as well, right? I don't know, there's a certain magic to it, right? To being in college. That's all I got.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. It says, interest equals motivation, which equals progression within program, which equals students completing credential, which increases employability. To me, the CTE pathway courses stitched between CT classes will keep them moving forward. Your thoughts on CTE's role in this change? I feel horrible because I know what is CTE again? Vivian, help me, or Lauren.
Thanks for asking.
It's career and technical education.
Okay, yes, actually, thank you, whoever said it, and thank you for putting in the chat. So I will say, in the same way that we talked about building the plane by flying it at the beginning, we've always been a super honest program. And so one of the things we talk about is the things that we're not that great at. And so one of the things that we're still working on is this connection between career and work. We have made some shifts and some growth, which has been phenomenally successful. For example, we have had students come through and get their certified nursing assistant certifications through us. We have had students come in, one student went and got their full EMT certification through us. We've done some workforce development training. We had a patient care skills class, which students were able to come in and experience the health career field with those like $300,000, you're not supposed to call them dummies, like little fake patients that give birth and you take their blood. And it was a way to introduce students to the technical aspects of work outside of college, right? Or that would follow a pathway. We see students motivated in that field all the time. They want to know what's out there. They come to us and they're like, we have no idea what we want to do. And we recognize that it is absolutely our responsibility to connect them to career and technical skill solutions. And so my thoughts on the role is that it needs to play a bigger part in all of our programming. It should not be college only, college first. I understand we're college programs. It has to be an and, right? It has to be both. And in terms of our program specifically, it is something that we're looking at and working on to improve. We're not there yet, but we're trying. We're going to get there. Just another quick note before we move on. It says in the chat, I think this is an opportunity to take non-traditional learners and develop them into traditional lifetime learners. Absolutely. Yes, we actually have a partnership. We don't talk about this in the presentation. I'll take 2 minutes and then I promise I won't talk anymore. We have a partnership with a program called TCC, Transition to Career and College, I think it stands for. And they're adult learners who have come back to school and are trying to get back into the realm of a career or an academic degree. And we've partnered with them to share our classes so that our young high school students have these adult learners who are into the program and they get to see them. There's a way in which having a 30-year-old in class kind of raises the maturity level, right? Students are not as likely to be kind of fooling around or to engage because this person is here while their children are in school or while their children are in daycare. They're not here to mess around. And so it brings a depth to the classroom that we didn't have before. And the pandemic, of course, has made things kind of funky, but it's one of the best things that we've kind of brought to the program because taking non-traditional learners from all ages and bringing them into the sphere really really weaves the web a little deeper. It's a really beautiful thought, and you should think about it if you're doing this in your own institutions.
Really helps with the funding as well, let me say.
All the money. Any other questions before we keep going? Thank you for those questions. Those were great.
Sure.
Okay.
So we're moving from structure to culture. Over to you, Shannon.
So as we transition from discussing the structure of our program to the culture of our program, I'd like to explain the lens in which I view the Gateway program. So I've only been working for Gateway for 2 years. This is October 1st will make 2 years for me. Prior to working to Gateway, I was a high school special education teacher, and I also taught elementary school, so like 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and special education in high school. And so I left teaching K through 12 frustrated with the systems in place and not being able to meet the glaringly obvious needs of my students. I was drawn to serve at Gateway because there was a clear difference in the culture and atmosphere that was cultivated and the ways in which my team was able to support student needs. The differences I noticed between Gateway and traditional public schools was astounding. And so as a nation, I feel that we're seeing trends of generations of kids who are desperate for connection through social media or in person, and add on COVID and not being able to get out of the house for 18 months. I feel like it had just expounded that. And so for a school to be a place where students spend the majority of their time, it lacks exactly that connection. The staff and the teachers are overworked, underpaid, frustrated, and they're lacking the time and energy to emotionally connect with their students. The ramifications are a student body that is mostly unengaged. And there's a direct correlation, I believe, to unengaged youth and behavioral issues in schools with the widespread use of suspension and expulsion being the go-to method of correction. Numerous students have shown that suspensions and expulsions have a correlation with the dropout rates and coming in contact with juvenile justice systems. And so Gateway, I believe, is an interruption to the school to prison pipeline. At Gateway, we make time for daily engagement with our students. We're building relationships. We're learning their dreams and their goals. We lean in and we ask questions. We push and we encourage. We give autonomy and individualized support. And we are very intentional about setting the tone for the culture and atmosphere of growth at Gateway. And so the following 4 fundamental facets of our culture are listed on the next slide.
So we start with relentless kindness. And I love this one because it seems really easy, right? Like, be kind. You see that on a t-shirt somewhere. The basic structure of politeness, right, since kindergarten is kindness. But I feel like we've taken the notion of kindness and we've infused it with ferocity, and we've cultivated it into a founding principle of our program. You see, I personally have always believed in the power of love. The bell hooks kind of love, right? She said, love is as love does. Love is an act of will, namely, both an intention and an action. So many years ago, I presented a workshop on the power of love, and it was a focus on love as a tool for radical change within the Gateway to College program. And surprisingly, I was met with such acceptance for that notion that even I was surprised. And so stay with me here. We treat each other with respect, right? We listen to our students, even when they're angry, even and especially when we are angry. When they push our buttons with their 1,000 excuses, or they don't show up to class again, or don't follow through on an assignment, or blow you off in the dozens of ways that they do, you still show up with kindness. And there are 2 parts to that. The showing up part is just as important as the kindness part. We are, like Vivian always says, dogs with a bone. We are relentless in our pursuit of success with our students. We believe in them and for them until they join us in partnership. And so we'll call your house. We'll show up at your job. We'll do anything we need to do to reach you. You know, for our students, there are times when we're holding grief with them, and there are other times when we're celebrating our joys with them. And we walk them through this journey together. Sometimes it's side by side and lovely, and other times we're dragging them by the coat collars, hollering and screaming. That's a fact. But we do it relentlessly, and we do it with love. And there has never, in the 11 years that I worked for this program, been a time that a student didn't eventually come to see that our tenacity that our relentless kindness was not just a prose or a caption or something lined up on the wall that we talked about all the time, but it was actually us engaged in love in action. And so that's why relentless kindness is important.
Moving from relentless kindness to the 4 rules of Gateway. I mentioned that earlier. So Gateway has 4 rules: show up, do your work, be kind, and communicate. So let me flesh that out a little bit. Show up, not just with your body. Bring your quirkiness, your hope, your despair, your humor, your stories, your questions, your opinions. Show up with authenticity. We know this is a big ask. Putting yourself out there, especially in this age of social media, can be risky. We still ask and we role model that authenticity. And aside, I hope you like the pictures on our slides. I love the pictures on our slides. I spent an hour yesterday reliving trips to New York and DC and UMass and Mount Holyoke and Cape Cod, art classes and beekeeping classes and scuba classes. And I was so sad because before COVID, part of showing up in our program was jumping into a van and going places. We would do that on the weekends. We would do that on spring break. We would do that in the summertime. And those trips allowed everyone to know each other in a different kind of way and have, and have the experiences that led to the stories that led to the bonding. And I miss that in my soul. So show up. Number 2, do your work, not just your academic work, but the work of growing up, right? Finding voice, managing conflict, valuing difference, coping with change, speaking your truth. I have a poster in my office that says, speak your mind, even if your voice shakes. Adolescence is such an intense time, and school needs to be a place where students are seen as whole people who are changing all the time and that need the patience and the love that change requires. Communicate. We have a college filled with resources, but we can't read your mind. So first, let's find the communication method that works for you, right? Text, email. We had a kid last year who would call us on the phone. We really didn't know what to do because I've really not ever had an adolescent want to talk to me. But anyway, he graduated. So first, teach us what the technique is, and then teach us how to read you, right? Let us know your preferred style and your triggers. Give us feedback. If we mess up, we will apologize. The thread of connection between human beings is delicate and sacred, and we want to get it right. Then lastly, be kind to yourself, to the people you live with, to each other, to everyone you encounter. Relentless kindness. Over to you, Shannon.
So our next one is urgency. And I think it's with such urgency that we attend to our day-to-day work with students. And for our students, all of the little details are so important. I actually would like to say they're urgent. And so they need this bus pass to work right now so they can get to work, so they can drop their child off to daycare. They need access to technology or they wouldn't otherwise have internet to complete their work. So if it weren't for us walking with them to the student center to get their hotspot for them, they wouldn't be able to access these things. They left a prior school because of gender identity discrimination, so they need us to speak up for and advocate for them in the proper use of their pronouns. We show them how they can show up for themselves until they're ready to do it on their own. The social justice work we do with and for our students is one of the biggest pieces of our work at Gateway. And whether or not it's actually our job, it's our belief that it's our responsibility to help our students get what they need.
And that power translates into actually another thing we've done presentations on. We call it power over or power with. And if you think about it, schools are inherently hierarchical systems, right? There are principals, there are presidents, there are vice principals and deans, teachers, professors. And all of those people are kind of higher on the power hierarchy than our students. And as most of you can remember, living with that knowledge as a teenager can be a little bit difficult. And when the system itself is problematic in some cases, it can be nearly impossible to live with that. And so we really come into Gateway conscious of our use of power. It's something we talk about from the beginning. It's not this amorphous thing, right? It's something that we're actively engaging with our instructors, with our students, and with ourselves. Because it's hard to let go of whatever power you think you've been deemed with when working with students. But the reality is that we can't make anyone do anything they don't want to do. We just can't. So our job is not about using power to make people to do things. Our job is about relationships. And so remember in that previous slide when I was talking about how sometimes we needed to grab kids by the coat collars and like drag them along on the good path? I don't do that as strangers. We can drag them along only because we have intentionally worked on building relationships with them as people. And so we begin this conversation from our first information session. We say out loud the things that we believe about them and about us showing up as people first. I say that all the time. You are not students first, you are people first. And so yes, they are students. They're also workers, and they are parents, and they are caregivers, and they are siblings. And we bring all of those pieces into our daily lives. And instead of insisting to them that they just be students in school, we acknowledge that that's really an impossible way to exist. You're never just one thing. So instead, we help them manage all of those really interlocking pieces. And so we invite them to share with us their needs. What is your work schedule? Let's talk about how we figure that out. You have to pick up your siblings from the bus. Let's figure that out. Because the reality is, I remember one of our students, she was late every day to school. And I was so frustrated with this student. And I'm like, you know how to take the bus. You have a bus pass. You understand your schedule. Why are you late all the time? And we finally had this conversation, and she was the oldest, and it was her responsibility to put her siblings on the bus. Well, guess what? Her siblings had to be on the bus pretty much right before she had to be in class. And so who was going to win? Me asking her to be on time for her class, or her mom asking her to put her siblings on the bus? I was going to lose every single time. And so we had to talk, and we had to figure out another thing, because it was actually a really beautiful thing that she was doing for her family. She was showing up for her family in a way that they needed her to. And it was really unfair of me to be like, that doesn't matter, because that does matter, right? She needed to do that. And I needed to find a way for that to be true, and for her class to be on time to be true too. We figured it out. And so, again, pulling rank, insisting students do it your way or no other way, it's not going to win in the long run. So use your power to work with them. It's not always easy, and it will inevitably mean that you have to shift off the path that you thought was best, but it's more about building a path that works for them rather than forcing the one that you imagined. And that's power over and power with.
Thank you, Julissa. So this concludes our section on culture. In a nutshell, relentless kindness. Failure is not an option. We will move heaven and earth to find you and to get you what you need. We will adult with you until you are ready. The 4 rules of Gateway: show up, do your work, communicate, and be kind. Urgency. Student issues need to be handled as the urgent matters that they are. Bus passes that don't work and disrespecting pronouns can make kids stay home forever. Power with, as opposed to power over. Adults need to see students as whole human beings with lives as complex and valuable as our own. We need to work with students to figure out the best path, and we need to use our social capital to help make a way for the young ones. So, in conclusion, we're almost there, folks. Thanks for hanging in there. We hope you feel our urgency for everyone to believe that underprepared and complicated high school students can become very successful college students with the right structure, the right culture, and the fierce and relentless insistence that they deserve a spot at the table. So that ends our TED Talk. Questions?
I'm going to show one more picture. So hold on, so we can do our questions, just because it's a fabulous picture and y'all are going to love our kids. There we go. Yay, questions. I love these kids. Now you can actually ask questions. I really just wanted you to see the picture. And again, feel free to unmute and ask questions or make comments. Feel free to put it in the chat and we'll read it out. But any thoughts, things that you're curious about, wondering about, things that don't make sense, things that you do in your program right now?
I have a question, which is sort of how have you adapted in the world of pandemic, prioritizing connection? What has that looked for you for the past 18 months?
That's a really, really good one. That's been so hard. It's been really, really hard. So we all worked from home. And so our students were fully remote during the majority of the pandemic. And it was incredibly difficult. I definitely found myself texting all the time. That was the main way. I made students come to Zooms, right? So I'm like, you need to talk to me. I want to see your face. And it wasn't, I want to talk to you about English. It was, I miss your face. And so I want you to turn on the camera, because it's so like, you know, it's awkward to be in a room with like all these letters, right? I want to see their faces. And so I did that all the time. I think Shannon and I spent so many hours, right? Just so many hours just calling, reaching, calling, reaching, calling. I'll text you, I'll email you, I'll call your mom, I'll do, like, it was a consistent, exhausting thing. I think our instructors did the best they could with remote classes. Synchronous, we learned very quickly that asynchronous classes do not work. That was a no-go, that was a fail. You took the class, you didn't pass it. And so definitely having that remote session so that they can see the instructor and talk. But it was really hard, Caroline, like making sure that we maintained those I think I said more than I needed to. I think it was always about like, I miss you guys. I wish we were in person, but let's talk about what this is. And for some, it wasn't enough.
One thing was easier in the pandemic, and that was attendance, because we would go to class, and when somebody was missing, we would text them and get them up, and then we would see them go to class. So like using 18 different devices at the same time, right, to try to get to the kid. One of the ways I kept my sanity was that our students needed laptops and hotspots and books. And I did probably over 100 home visits over the course of the year, taking them, staying 6 feet away, passing the laptop over the fence, oftentimes with a chocolate bar, and just having a chance to see the human being and have the human being see me. And that, I think it was more for me than for the student, but it really helped my soul.
Thank you, guys.
This is a good question in the chat. So the question is, how are the non-credit college courses funded?
So let me just say a word about the kind of the financial model. Districts paid, our charge is $7,500 a year for students to come. I don't know, we're probably about in the middle of what gateway programs charge. And so we buy a class, we hire an adjunct instructor at the same rate they would make if they were teaching on the college side of the house. And so if that's $4,000, $5,000, whatever that is. And so the money the districts give us goes to the three of us. And then the non-credit courses, we also do credit courses as a cohort, which saves us some money. And then frankly, we have baby geniuses who are out there taking a full slate of college courses, and we pay for that as well. So we charge more than just the tuition for the class is I guess the short answer. Did that answer the question? Other questions?
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Keep looking at the
Wanna
chat.
I want to tell a story. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thank you to Stephanie for putting all the links up. I appreciate it.
I want to tell a story about a student, actually 2 stories about the same student. And I'm not going to use the bad language, but I kind of want to. So about 10 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago, it was right around spring break. And I'm sitting in my office, and my office is right across the way from the classroom. And the classroom door swings open, like slams open, right? And a student comes out shouting, I got a mother effing A, only and I'm talking loud, I got a mother effing A. And in that moment, do you respond to the door slamming, the profanity and the loudness? Or do you turn around and send an email to your college president saying mother effing A and explain that you just saw the world shift, right? The world just shifted for this kid. And so this kid, actually later on, she needed 1 extra class in order to graduate in June. And we then invented what we call Maymester. The community college ends about a month before K-12 ends. And so the college offers courses for 2 weeks. So we started offering that. And I remember this kid showing up at my doorway, gazing at me like I was almost an alien creature and saying, you're trying to find a way for us. And I think her experience of institutions up till then was that institutions did not try to find a way for you, right? Institutions tried to get in your way. And so this kid graduated, and we've stayed in contact with her. And she and her partner just bought a duplex. They closed on their first home. She's 28 years old. She is doing so incredibly well in the world. I see Stephanie applauding. Right, mother F&A, she owns a house. So the structure, to be audacious with structure, so that you do what's getting in the kids' way of what they need to do. And the other piece we didn't talk about, and I realize this is a glaring omission, is finding the social justice partners at your college and working with them, having them do the pulling with you. We have our own librarian, Camille Close. That's not in her job description, but she's ours, right? We have the person in financial aid. We have the person in admissions. We have our people that make sure that our kids are getting the same or more than what other students are getting on the college campus.
I'm so excited that so many of you came and joined us today. I know we only have like 3 minutes left, but I just want to say that I appreciate the interest in what we're doing, and I hope that it was inspiring to some of the work that you're doing in your own institutions. It's really easy to, well, it can be really easy, right, to serve students who are already doing well and know exactly where they want to go and all those things. They're great and they deserve a great pathway, and it's, you know, wonderful that people get to help them. But there's this whole other world of student. There's this whole other world of community that can use your expertise and your passion and your love in a world where they have not always been welcome and are certainly not expected. And so if you have the power to reach those students, do it. It will transform their lives. It will transform your life. And we see every single day how it inspires community. It doesn't just change one student. I promise you, it never changes just one student. There's a whole kind of ripple effect that happens when someone who didn't think they were going to make it through high school is now that college girl. That's what happens. And so again, we only have 2 minutes if there's any final questions. If not, just thank you for being here. And hopefully this inspires you to do something different in your own spaces. And it looks like they did say that they would upload the slides to the resource center. So the video will be up, that you can watch the presentation, and the slides will be up as well.
Thank you, everyone.